Hey everybody, it's Angie and welcome to Hot and Flashy. I've got a menopause update for you in today's video. I haven't done a menopause update in about 4 years, and since then some things have changed in my menopause and lifestyle routine to manage my menopause. And I also have some pretty fun and exciting news to share with you guys, and I'm going to tell you that at the end of the video, so stick around to the end for that. I've done a bunch of videos on menopause and on my menopause journey in the past, and if you want to check out any of those, I can link that playlist for you right up here. That includes some interviews with one of my favorite menopause information sources, which is Menopause Taylor here on YouTube. And it also includes some of my lifestyle videos, my what I eat in a day, the how I stay slim and reduce menopausal belly fat videos. So they're all in that playlist. Just to go over kind of my menopausal history briefly with you for those that are new here. I am 61 now. I became fully postmenopausal when I was 54. So that was 7 years ago. I first started having perimenopausal symptoms in my mid-40s. But in my early 40s is when the WHI study came out, and because of the headlines from that, I was pretty sure that HRT and estrogen in general was a terrible thing to take, that estrogen was dangerous, that it caused cancer, that it caused strokes and blood clots and heart disease. And so I went off birth control when I was in my 40s. I actually didn't have terrible menopausal symptoms for most of the time until I became like fully postmenopausal. When you're fully postmenopausal is when you haven't had a period for 12 months. So that was the year between 53 and 54. I had my last period at 53. By the same time, the next year at 54 that I hadn't had another one, bam, I was postmenopausal. And during that year was when my quality of life really hit the skids. I really couldn't sleep more than 4 or 5 hours a night. I was having hot flashes multiple times a day. I was having night sweats. I had brain fog. You know, you walk into a room and you don't know what you came there for, or you're in the middle of a sentence and you can't think of a word. There were some other symptoms that I had that I didn't realize were even connected to menopause, like ringing in my ears and urinary incontinence and all this other stuff. Like, I thought it was just part of aging, that you just got these things when you were older, but as it turns out, they're all connected to menopause. And by that time, since my sleep was so bad and I really needed to sleep, I really love sleep. I mean, don't we all? I mean, who doesn't love a good night's sleep, and who isn't cranky the next day when they don't get one? So by that time, I had also heard that maybe HRT wasn't as bad as we had previously thought it was. And I had also heard that it could be protective for heart disease. I do have a huge history of heart disease, of Alzheimer's, and of osteoporosis. So because of those things, when I approached my doctor about it, she agreed to put me on it. It was like night and day, the difference between how I felt. I could sleep at night. I wasn't having brain fog as much. I definitely stopped having hot flashes and night sweats, and all that was great. But getting there, I feel like, is such a tale of what's wrong with the medical establishment, at least at the time. It took 3 doctors and 4 years to finally get on the right dose and the right delivery systems of HRT for me. Like, the first doctor I went to about it didn't offer me HRT at all. I was asking for HRT, but she offered me antidepressants. And I was like, I'm not depressed. I don't need antidepressants. Then my second doctor actually gave me the HRT, but when a few months into it, I had a little bit of bleeding, she sounded the alarm that it could be uterine cancer and had me come in for a screening. And then she adjusted my dose down so that I wouldn't have the bleeding. And when I was on that and had more bleeding, then she decided that really I wasn't a good candidate for HRT, and she thought that I should probably come off of it. And so I actually went off of it for a short period of time. But when I went off of it, all my symptoms came back with a vengeance. And again, I couldn't sleep, was having 15 hot flashes a day and 10 at night. You know, it was just crazy, could not think straight. So I decided to go back on it, but this time I was armed with the information that I had learned here on YouTube from Menopause Taylor, who I mentioned already. And at that point, I had had a one-on-one consultation with her, and she's actually the doctor that helped me to get on the right dose of HRT and the right delivery system. So it was actually a doctor on YouTube who helped me to get on the right dose and the right delivery system of HRT, not my actual doctor. And this is kind of the problem that exists in the world of medicine today, is that 90% of the doctors out there don't have any training in menopause. And so the standard medical line is, it's just something that you live through, you get to the other side, HRT is dangerous, end of story, no talking about it. Thank goodness we are alive today when there are so many doctors online who are talking about menopause and HRT, and they're rolling back a lot of the information that was delivered from the WHI study, which was terribly flawed. And so now the best information that I get on menopause is from social media. And it's a sad state of affairs, but hopefully within my lifetime that will change so that when my daughters are going through menopause in 25 or 30 years, it will be a completely different situation. So the last time we talked, I had just started on a new HRT patch. It was the estradiol 0.05 milligram patch. And on Dr. Taylor's recommendation, I had my doctor insert a Mirena IUD. That's where I get my progesterone, and it is local, just in my uterus. So that way it stopped me from having that breakthrough bleeding that she kept calling me in for the uterine cancer screenings. I actually saw a couple of posts from another menopause doctor that I follow, Dr. Heather Hirsch, where she was talking about the side effects of starting HRT or changing your dosage of HRT. And she was saying that a little bit of spot bleeding is very, very common when you first start on HRT or when you change dosages. So on that dose of HRT, my brain fog was better. I wasn't having any hot flashes. I wasn't having any night sweats. Because of not having night sweats, I was sleeping a little bit better, but still my sleep wasn't fantastic. It wasn't, like back to normal. But they do say that you should be looking for 80% improvement in your symptoms on the HRT. So I felt like I was getting 80% improvement in my symptoms, but I did still have to use a sleep aid to get a full night's sleep. And based on Dr. Taylor's recommendation, I also got a bone density test at that time. That was 4 years ago. And it showed that while most of my bones were fine and in good shape, that I did already have some bone loss in my left hip. And I was categorized as having osteopenia, which is pre-osteoporosis. I couldn't believe it because I thought I was doing everything right. I was eating the right things. I had always lifted weights, and so I thought that I was doing what you could. My calcium and vitamin D levels were good. I took supplements. I was like, well, how can this be? 8 years before I should even have had my first bone density test, I already was showing signs of having osteopenia. And what if I had waited until I was 65 to have my first bone density test? My bones would look like Swiss cheese by then, and it would be too late to do anything about it. And another thing that I really couldn't believe was that my doctor's response to the test was, "You're normal, don't change anything." And I was like, what? Huh? How is this normal? They're not concerned with preventing the bone loss that we should all be concerned about preventing. But I was happy that I had finally gotten on a helpful dose of HRT, and I was hopeful that when I got another DEXA scan in a few years, that it would hopefully be better. So over the next 2 to 3 years following that, I stayed on that protocol, mainly because it was working pretty well. I was getting that 80% reduction in symptoms, but also because it was just such an incredibly busy time in my life. I got divorced, I sold my house, I bought and renovated another house, I moved, and of course, COVID hit during that. But when I moved, I did have to get some new doctors. And so I made sure that I got a doctor this time who is really well-versed in menopause care. I used the doctor finder on the menopause.org website. That's the North American Menopause Society, NAMS for short. And so it's a really great way to find yourself a good physician who's going to help you and have more up-to-date information about HRT and menopause than my previous doctor had. So when I went to see my new doctor, I told her that I was pretty happy with the HRT I was on because it was taking care of most of my issues. I did say that I was still having a little bit of trouble sleeping. I did also tell her that I was having some urinary incontinence. I was having this urge all the time. So she put me on a medication called Mybetriq to try. So I tried that for about a month. I gotta say, it did kind of help, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like how I felt on it. It made my back hurt. And so I went off of it. When I went off of that, my doctor didn't really have anything else to help me with. And so again, I've turned to social media, and because of the doctors that are now on social media and the ones that I follow, I've made some changes to my diet and my exercise routine. I did just make another change to my HRT routine, and there's a couple of things that I'm also thinking of tweaking. But I just wanted to quickly go over the list of doctors that I have followed and do follow. As I mentioned, the first person that I started following was Dr. Barbie Taylor, who is Menopause Taylor here on YouTube. And I'll link all these doctors in the info box below the video, as well as some of their books, some of the podcasts that I listen to that I have felt have been really important. Then Dr. Heather Hirsch, who I've also mentioned already. She was head of the Menopause and Midlife Clinic at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. She just started her own telemedicine group where she's gathering menopause experts to do telemedicine. Another really important doctor that I follow is Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She is an OBGYN. She's also a NAMS certified doctor, and she's a certified nutritionist. She's written a couple books. One is just about to come out at the end of April. The other one is The Galveston Diet. There's Dr. Avram Blooming. He has the website Estrogen Matters and the book Estrogen Matters. That's one of the first things I read. More recently, I started following Dr. Corinne Men, who is an OBGYN and also a breast cancer survivor. I started following Dr. Vonda Wright, who is an orthopedic surgeon, and Dr. Stacy Sims, who's a scientist and an expert on women's physiology and menopause. Also, Dr. Kelly Casperson, who's a urologist. She has the podcast You Are Not Broken. And then a new doctor that I just started following is Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who is a neuroscientist. And she's looking at how the lack of estrogen affects our brains. I'd love to be able to go into specifics on exactly what I learned from each doctor, but it would fill up more than one video. But to put it in a nutshell, I think what I learned from all these doctors collectively is that I'm in more danger by not taking HRT than I am from taking HRT, because it can just help me to live a longer and better life. Women who take HRT live longer, die less of all causes of mortality. So I always like to tell you guys that I'm not trying to convince anyone to go on HRT. I'm just telling you the reasons that I did and that I'm going to continue on it. So back to the changes I've made in the last 4 years. About 2 years ago, I started including more protein in my diet. Once we're postmenopausal, we process protein much less efficiently than we did when we were premenopausal. And so you have to eat a lot more protein to get the same benefits out of it. Now I've tried to increase my protein from about, I think I was getting maybe 45 grams a day back then. And when I first started increasing it, I started trying to increase it to 60 grams a day. Well, since then, I've learned that really the amount that I should be having is between 100 and 120 grams of protein a day, and that it should be spread out evenly throughout the day because you can only process or absorb so much protein. So I try to get 30 to 40 in each meal, and then I have a snack that is pretty protein heavy. Increasing protein helps to reduce appetite, helps to increase muscle mass, increases bone mass, lowers blood pressure, and increases fat burning. So it's great for you if you're trying to lose weight, but it's also good for you if you're trying to strengthen your bones. At the same time, I learned that increasing fiber would help me to maintain a healthy weight, help to control blood sugar, and help to control my cholesterol. I also learned that too much sugar in your diet contributes to inflammation and visceral belly fat. So I started cutting out much more sugar in my diet a couple of years ago. This has been one of the hardest things that I've done because I love sugar. I have a sweet tooth. And so I was eating probably about 150 grams of sugar a day, and I've reduced that down to about 10. I talked about all these changes in greater detail over the last couple of years in my How I Stay Slim and Beat Menopausal Belly Fat videos, which are also in the playlist or linked right up here, and I'll link them in the info box below the video as well. I learned that post-menopause, women start losing about 2% of their bone mass a year for the first 5 years, so that by the time they get their first bone density test at 65, they've already lost 20 to 25% of their bone. More recently, I learned that diet and lifting weights isn't enough to really impact your bones once you're postmenopausal, that you really have to lift heavy weights. You really have to do impact. You really have to take more supplements than just calcium and vitamin D. And that was like a big aha moment for me because, you know, this whole time I've been trying to figure out, well, how do I have osteopenia already when I thought I was doing everything right? But as it turns out, you know, over those couple of years that I was moving and getting divorced and all that stuff, I really wasn't working out. And if I was working out, I was reducing the amount of weight that I was lifting. And every time I would go to work out, I'd be like, oh, well, let me just lift these little weights because I'm tired and I'm old. Now, just recently, I've started incorporating some of the things that I learned from Dr. Vonda Wright and Dr. Stacy Sims, which is that you need impact in your workouts. And I had stopped doing all impact. And that you need to lift heavy in your workouts. And I had stopped lifting heavy. So I'm reincorporating those things into my exercise routine. I also bought myself a weighted vest. This is a little 8-pounder. So that I can wear it around for a couple minutes to an hour a day, and that will help to add more weight to my frame so that my bones can have more weight on them and help them to re-densify better. I also bought myself a rebounder, which I haven't set up yet. It's still in the box in my hallway, but NASA uses rebounding to help the astronauts re-strengthen their bones when they come back from outer space from zero gravity. And so there's good science saying that rebounding can help, and that's one way if you can't do impact where you don't really run so much of a risk of injury. So I only started doing that stuff about a month or two ago, but in the meantime, I had decided that I should get another DEXA scan just to check and see if the estrogen was helping with my bones at all. And so I went and I got another one done, and I gotta say, I was so disappointed to see that all my numbers had worsened. So let me just show you my results. So my first DEXA scan, which I had in 2019, that's where I had the osteopenic score on the left hip of negative 0.2. But they did a spine, which was 0.6. But now this time, the left hip had gone from negative 0.2 to negative 0.7. So it had gotten worse. And then it also had a spine, which is 0.2, which is still not in the osteopenic range, but is still decreased from the strength that it was when I had the other DEXA scan in 2019. So I was so shocked, but I feel like I shouldn't be so shocked because what I had learned from Dr. Taylor years and years ago is that estrogen isn't for fixing. So she had explained in a video that even if you start taking estrogen to, say, help with your bones, it's not going to be able to re-densify the loss that you've had already. It can only help to slow down the loss that you're having in the future. But I thought that the dose that I was on would completely prevent any additional bone loss, which obviously it didn't. So HRT alone isn't really like the silver bullet that's going to make you stop leaching bone and losing bone density. But because that DEXA scan did come in showing more bone loss, I asked my doctor to increase my dosage on the estradiol that I'm taking. We'll see what happens in 2 years when I get my next DEXA scan. Hopefully those numbers will be back on the positive side. She said that she would increase it, but she wanted to just do a quick experiment to see if it was that I wasn't absorbing it properly from the patch. So we switched me over to an oral estradiol for a month or so, and I could tell the difference right away, and I could tell that I wasn't absorbing it nearly as well with the oral version as with the patch because some of my hot flashes came back. I couldn't sleep at all. I was up half the night. The thing is that everyone's different. Everyone will absorb the medication differently and depending on the different routes. So that's why there are so many different routes, and that's why your doctor should try different things on you. So that was kind of a failed experiment. So after that, she said, okay, let's up your dosage. We'll go back to the patch. And she upped my dosage to a 0.075 milligram twice weekly patch. So I've been on the increased level of estradiol for about 3 months now. Going on it, I did have a little bit of spotting in the first few weeks. I told her about it. She said, that's fine. That's normal when you're changing dosage, which is what I had learned. My doctor was like, give me a call back in 3 months and let me know how it's going. And if you're still having some bleeding, then we'll probably put you on an oral progesterone to combat that. and maybe that'll help with your sleep too. I haven't had any more bleeding, but I think I might want to try adding in a little oral progesterone. And then the third thing that I'm thinking about doing is getting a prescription for vaginal estrogen, because I have learned from all these doctors that localized vaginal estrogen can help with urinary incontinence symptoms. I was hoping that being on this higher dosage of the patch was going to help with that, and it doesn't seem to have helped with that, so I think I might need just some local estrogen to help more with that, so we'll see what happens there. Because of this new DEXA scan result that's showing more bone loss, I'm also increasing some of the supplements that I take and also adding in some new supplements. I'm upping my calcium to 1,300 milligrams a day, up from about 500. I spread that out over 3 servings because your body can only absorb 500 to 600 milligrams of calcium at a time, and also calcium absorption is slightly affected by caffeine, so I kind of hold off taking my first one until a couple hours after I've had my morning cup of tea. I'm also taking an additional 2,500 IUs of vitamin D. The recommendation is to take 1,000, but the research shows that 800 to 1,000 IUs don't really help with bone health. It's really levels of 2,000 to 4,000 IUs that have made a difference in bone loss. So I'm upping that substantially. I'm adding in a new vitamin, vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 helps to send the calcium that you're taking to your bones. Normally, I guess what happens is when you take calcium supplements or even eat it, get it with your food, it just goes around in your blood and ends up in your arteries, and where you really want it to go is to your bones. So K2 helps it get there. And I did find a 2002 meta-analysis of 16 studies that involved 6,425 postmenopausal women, and it found that those taking vitamin K2 supplements had a positive effect on bone mineralization and increased bone strength. And I'm taking 90 micrograms of K2. Then I added 500 milligrams of magnesium. Dr. Haver talks a lot about taking magnesium to help with bone loss, and that it also helps with heart disease, sleep quality, mood, and improved blood sugar levels. And then zinc is the last thing that you need to take for bone health, but I was already getting enough zinc in my multivitamin, so I didn't add or increase the level of zinc that I'm taking because I'm already good with that. That is about it for the changes that I have made to my HRT and my entire menopausal lifestyle routine, I'm going to call it now. All right, so I teased you in the beginning with my fun news, and so it's time for my big announcement, which is that I'm going to have an opportunity to film a video with Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She is like the #1 menopause doc out there right now, and so I want to come armed with your questions. I want to know what you guys want to know about menopause. So leave them in the comment section below this video. So I'm really excited that I'm going to have a chance to talk to her. It's not going to be just me. There's going to be a couple other creators there. I'm actually going to Texas in about a month to go to a creator house where my friend Lisa J from Lisa J Makeup has invited 8 other creators to come to this house and get together and, talk and exchange best practices about being on YouTube and, all this stuff, but also to film together. So we're scheduling videos. So the other creators who will be there besides Lisa and myself will be Marlena Stell from Makeup Geek. So excited to meet Marlena and film with her. Then Nikki LaRose, Gabby from Glam Girl Gabby, Allie Glines, Penny from Penn Smith Skincare, Justin and Diana Hickox. Justin has a hair care channel, and I think that's everybody. So I'm so excited to be doing this creator house. Let me know if there's anyone on that list that you specifically want me to film with, or any kind of videos that you're looking for out of that. So there will be 4 of us talking to Dr. Haver in that video, so I'm not sure that I'll get to ask all your questions. So definitely look at the questions that people are asking and either thumbs up a question that you have or just add under it, yeah, I want to know about this too, so that I can bring the ones that are most important to people. So that is it for today's video, everybody. I hope you found it helpful and informative. If you did, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. As always, I thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.